All right, friends, welcome back. So, fourth grade astronomy, we're talking about a couple different things. Storytelling as a powerful tool for working with science. And in this case, we're talking about a NASA rover, and then we're talking about building a radio tower. So these are ways to connect the SEPs, science and engineering practices, into our astronomy unit. You could also build rockets or something else that might be associated with it. Those are a little more complicated though, and require more equipment. So this is a quicker, faster way to, less complicated way, less equipment heavy way to get the SEPs built into your astronomy curriculum. Now, what I normally have the kids do is they're going to need to build a rover, a landing vehicle of some kind. This is a NASA demonstration that will then enable the landing craft to land without cracking its payload. In this case, the payload is a raw egg inside a Ziploc bag. Okay, so that's the idea. But if you just explain it that way and kind of go with it, you're kind of missing not the heart of the lesson, but a way to engage the kids a little more effectively. And that is, you need to provide a story to them, put them into the narrative that you've got, the structure that they need to help in terms of solving this problem. And they're going to be more involved and engaged in solving that problem if they feel like they're more emotionally connected to it. So, for instance, one of the videos I'm going to show you is called 7 Minutes of Terror, which is from NASA, and these are the people who put the Curiosity rover together that landed on Mars several years ago. Now, I'll play just a couple minutes of this.
When people look at it, it looks crazy. That's a very natural thing. Sometimes when we look at it, it looks crazy. It is the result.
I know you can't hear that one, so I'll stop. But what it is basically is a well-made video. It takes about 5 minutes. It talks through all the different engineering processes of getting a Mars rover to land on Mars without kicking up all this dust, and that would then damage the rover. So what they end up with is this crazy contraption where a rover or lander comes down, hovers about 30, more than about 60 meters above the ground, and then slowly lowers on cables the actual rover itself. Now this rover, that sounds easy, except the rover is the size of a car and weighs over 1,000 pounds. So this is using rockets to stay, so this tray is the landing vehicle, and then it's dropping the rover down on cables, and then when the rover gets to the bottom, it cuts its cables and this flies away. It's a complicated process to do it, but they walk through it. And it's nice for a couple different reasons. It shows actual engineers who did this, and they're not all white and they're not all men. So it's to get a little bit of inclusion in there, but it also talks about all the different people who solved this problem, because it's not a simple problem. So it kind of builds a little bit of interest in there. And you can talk about the different rovers that are currently on the moon or on Mars, and some of the problems that some of them have had, because not all the Mars landing vehicles have worked. Some have crashed disastrously. Others have made it well. So you give them some basic tools: paper plates, straws, some tape, rubber bands, whatever tools you want to give the kids. I suggest against using bubble wrap, for instance, because bubble wrap is such an effective cushioning tool that it makes it really easy for the kids. In this case, I used a couple paper plates, and I stacked them so that there's a little bit of bubble here, a little bit of give. I taped them together, and then I built a little bed with some straws, and then I built a little containment thing above that with some straws, tape, and a little bit of rubber band. So when I put my egg in here, this container thing on top would then hold it. And what you want your kids to do is drop it from various heights to see if everything is going to work. Now, the other thing that would be bad is if you drop it and then it tilts and lands, and of course that's obviously not going to work well. So the easiest way to do that for your kids, and you can go ahead and tell them this because it's going to be hard for them to experiment and find out. If they put a washer or a couple washers taped to the bottom of their craft, it helps lower the center of gravity so that it always falls straight down. Okay? So in this case, I've dropped it a couple times, unfortunately, my egg did not quite make that last drop. But what you want to do is have the kids drop it from higher and higher until there's only one egg that's survived, and that would be the winner of the group. Now, I have had kids drop this from as high as 30 feet and still have their egg survived. So it depends on what they do with it, what they use on the inside, how they want to use paper. Folding paper, for instance, does a really good job of absorbing impact and whatnot. Lots of different ways they can go ahead and do this. If you want it to be complicated, you want to be really challenging, you would charge them for the different materials. And so they might have a budget, and they might say, well, each straw is worth 5 cents, and each piece of tape is worth a penny, or whatever it is, or limit how much they have. You have 1 foot of tape, or 2 feet of tape, and you've got only 5 straws to use, no matter how you want to use them. If you've done things like this before in your classroom, you can work your way up to more complicated procedures like that. If you haven't before, I would suggest giving them unlimited materials, as long as they're working with them. If they're just playing around with it, then you can cut them off. But if they're working with it, like if they try something and it didn't work, but they need new materials, that's perfectly fine. If they're just one person in their group is just cutting up straws for no reason, just because they got a pair of scissors in their hands and they're just cutting up things, I cut them off, right? You didn't use your materials properly. But if they're actually trying something and it didn't work, I'm happy to give them more materials. So that's the first one, and we're making a lander of some kind and using a raw egg. By the way, always put the raw egg in a Ziploc bag so that you don't have raw egg going everywhere and you have to worry about salmonella. So keep it in the bag. Now, again, using the story to put the kids into the situation so they're more engaged and more thinking about, yes, this is just paper plates and straws and whatnot and an egg, but talking about it in a real world situation provides some more emotional connection. The second one would be, and this is one of my favorite movies and one of my favorite books, and this is called The Martian. And this is the poor Matt Damon left out. This is just the trailer from it.
At some point, everything's going to go south on you.
Really?
You're going to say, this is it. This is how I end.
Where Mark is dead.
Now, you can either accept that.
Now, there's all kinds of things that go on in this movie that I like about it. It's a lot of drama. For those of you who don't know the story, one astronaut's left on Mars, and it's about 4 years, typically, between when NASA decides they want to take someone to Mars, and then they can actually do it. So he has to survive 4 years on Mars by himself. Now, in the end, they kind of shorten that timeline to make it more manageable for him, but that's the thing that he's going with. Now, fortunately for him, he's both a botanist and an engineer, so he's able to engineer all kinds of things in here. I do have to give you a warning. The trailer is really awesome. It's very dynamic, of course, as you might expect. There is one curse word in it, so you can't play the actual trailer, the whole of it, to your kids. Preview it beforehand so you know where that is. He says they have to engineer the shit out of something. So don't tell that part to your kids, because they'll go home and tell their parents. But that'll be the thing they remember the entire year. Will be that word. So don't do that. But you can talk about it. You can show them a clip of this. You can show them a clip of the actual movie. And the thing I like about it is he basically he's not a superhero. He's just a regular guy, and he takes science, and it helps him live. In this case, we're using basic materials: straws, some tape, some clay. And in this situation, if we're trapped on Mars, we've lost communication. We need to build a radio tower to get communication back to Earth. So we're going to use some clay, we're going to use some straws, and then this wire is going to be the wire that's actually making the antenna. Now, I put a wire in here because while this doesn't look like a lot, and certainly not a lot of weight, this will greatly impact how tall that tower can be without falling over. And that's what you want. You need a freestanding tower to be built up. So you give them the materials, you give them the situation. If you don't want to show the video clip and whatnot, at least tell part of the story. You can read part of the story from the book, for instance, to get them excited in terms of what's going on. Again, emotionally get them connected to the story. The clay works really well for securing the feet of, if you wrap it around the straws, for instance, the clay will help it stick to a tray. And I use trays because that way you don't get clay bits all over your tables, for instance. So I use the tray, and then that helps it as a nice firm anchor. Now, as they build this up higher and higher and higher, what you want to do is the highest you can get without it falling over, and then the antenna has to go through it. Now, some kids will wrap the antenna around it, whatever. Smarter kids will actually take the antenna and put it inside the straws first, and then build up. That way it's a little easier to control. It depends on what them. I've even had some kids, because they couldn't get their tower to stand, they asked for it. I started giving them this. I started giving them string, and so they use the string as guy wires, helping to support their structure. And I've had kids get them as tall as the ceiling, so they had to actually stop at that point because they made it that tall with just straws, tape, and some bits of clay. So they can really push themselves with it. When you do this, you can have it, the simplest way to structure it is which group does the best job. Now, best job could be which one solves the problem, but it could also be, so in this case, which is the tallest radio antenna. It could also be which group worked the best together. I would suggest using both, so you can have an award, a little treat, or whatever it is for people who do a good job as a group solving the problem, but also as a group who works the best together, most cooperatively, okay? Whenever I do a problem like this with this engineering problem, whether it's the lander or whether it's something like this, get your kids to draw their own idea on a piece of paper with labels. So here's my materials. This is straw, this is clay, this is a string, whatever. Draw it first for their own. Talk about it as a group, so they have to share their ideas and pitch their ideas. They are arguing for their idea. My idea is better because of this. And then they can have a discussion about it, vote for the one they think is going to work, or the pieces of them that are going to combine to be the best one, and that's the one they build. Okay? If you don't do that, then the loudest person in the group, their idea is going to win typically, and then someone can always just sit back and let everyone else think about this. If you have them draw their own individual plans before they move forward, so you're circulating around the group, it's like, okay, I see a plan for everybody, go ahead and start working on the next step, which is group discussion, okay? Oh, come to this table, only 2 of you have a drawing, everyone else, you guys got to get the drawings before you can start discussing it. Get them to go through each step as they go through this. The last step would be that sometimes it doesn't have to be a competition among the groups. It can be like, oh, you built your tower this tall. Other people were this tall, other people were this tall. Okay, let's come back as a class. What do you see from each other's works? So you can have the kids round robin through the tables. Come to this table. Table A, what'd you do? Why did you do it? Oh, we did it this way because of X. Oh, well, did it work? Yes or no? Cool. Then come back to it day 2, day 3, a week later, whenever. Have everyone think about what they learned from the other groups, what they learned from their own experiences, and see what the difference is. Which group learned the most? Which group was able to apply what they found better than everyone else? Because maybe the group that did the best job was awesome, but maybe they don't make much more change. They only make a little bit of change, versus the other groups make a great deal of change. They've learned a lot more, incorporate a lot more, so then that can be a positive thing. You can also just do intergroup competition. So we had 15 centimeters the first time, now we have 85 centimeters. It's a fantastic change, therefore your group won. Okay? So different ways to include the SCPs into it. But again, include a narrative of some kind into it to help your kids connect emotionally with what's going on. They'll remember better, they'll be more engaged as they do it. Thanks.